Hey guys, my name is Brandon, and in this video, I'll be ranking the 7 worst movies I watched over quarantine. And as I mentioned in my first video, I spent this time watching approximately 110 different movies. And, none of them have been straight up bad, but these are the worst 7 that I have watched. The worst movie will be in the number 1 spot, and with that in mind, let's get into it. Disclaimer. All of the movies, pictures, clips shown in this video belong to their rightful owners. I'm merely criticizing, analyzing, and giving my own thoughts on these movies. Number 7, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is a 2015 spy action movie starring Henry Cavill, Armie Hammer, Alicia Vikander, and Elizabeth Debicki, and is directed by Guy Ritchie. It's a spy movie set during the height of the Cold War that depicts the unexpected and improbable collaboration of the CIA and the KGB to prevent a mysterious criminal organization from using nuclear weapons. So the good parts. In my opinion, the movie was carried by the chemistry between Henry Cavill's and Armie Hammer's characters. It was really entertaining watching them try to one-up each other while also developing more of a relationship/friendship as the movie progressed. The visuals, from the sets to the cars to the costumes, were also really great to look at. Now the bad parts. I hear the phrase style over substance being used a lot to describe this movie, and I honestly have to say I agree with that statement. The plot is straight out of a spy movie 101 handbook. The dialogue is monotonous, boring, nothing too creative. The characters are never fully developed, especially our female leads as well as the villains. And after a while of this, the movie just becomes a chore to get through. And so I gave The Man from U.N.C.L.E. a 6.5 out of 10. Number 6, Lethal Weapon, starring Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, and Gary Busey, directed by Richard Donner. Lethal Weapon is a buddy cop action comedy that centers on the unlikely partnership of a veteran cop and a reckless cop during a homicide investigation. The good parts. So without a doubt, Lethal Weapon was the inspiration and foundation for a ton of buddy cop action movies that came after it, including my favorites like Rush Hour. Mel Gibson and Danny Glover's rocky relationship is also really fun to watch, leading to a lot of great one-liners and great scenes. Now the bad parts. I know I'll be flamed for putting this so low, but I've definitely seen better versions of the same formula. The characters are not really that interesting. The plot is thin and predictable as hell. I could probably predict all the scenes that came in the last 20 minutes. Some of the action itself also wasn't that great, especially the final scene. And I thought the relationship between Mel Gibson's and Danny Glover's characters, although interesting to watch, was a little bit forced. And I think I would have appreciated it more if it was allowed more room to breathe. And for those reasons, I gave Lethal Weapon a 6.5 out of 10. Number 5, Three Colors Blue, starring Juliette Binoche and Benoit Regent, directed by Krzysztof Kieslowski. Three Colors Blue is a 1993 French drama film that tells the story of a woman who learns to deal with her grief after a tragic accident that claims the lives of her husband and daughter. So the good parts. Now, I think this movie might be one of the most technically perfect movies I've ever watched. There are some really stunning shots and cinematography in this movie, and Juliette Binoche was also really good in this role. I fully bought that her character was going through all the grief that she was suffering. So the bad parts. Now the plot itself wasn't that interesting. It just follows the protagonist throughout her daily life, and not much out of the ordinary really happens. So in the end, I couldn't really connect with it, and it was just a gorgeous depiction of someone's daily life. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Number 4, The Name of the Rose, starring Sean Connery, F. Murray Abraham, Christian Slater, and Ron Perlman, directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud. Now my favorite part of this movie was that the premise was really unique and reminded me of a Sherlock Holmes in a medieval setting. The costumes and the set design and everything like that was also really great. Now the problems I had with this movie was that there was a lot of questionable acting, poor pacing of the plot, and an abundance of pretty big plot holes that kind of took me out of the movie. Also, the ending of the movie was unrealistically happy. and I don't really want to spoil the movie, so take that however you want. I gave The Name of the Rose a 6.5 out of 10. Number 3, Life of Bryan, starring the Monty Python group and directed by Terry Jones. Life of Bryan is a 1979 British comedy set in ancient Rome that tells the story of a young Jewish man born on the same day as Jesus Christ, who accidentally gains a reputation of being the Messiah. So the good parts were that there are definitely some iconic and classic bits of comedy in this movie, and the overall sets, costumes, and props reflected that Roman time period really well. Now, what I didn't really like about this movie was that, like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the funny parts were unfortunately balanced with a lot of unfunny parts, sometimes painfully so. And for a movie that relies so much on its comedy, not getting some of the jokes or the humor definitely brought down my enjoyment of this movie. But hey, just because the humor didn't work for me doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. In the end though, I gave Life of Bryan a 6.5 out of 10. Number 2, Breathless, starring Jean-Paul Belmondo and Jean Seberg, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. Breathless is a 1960 French crime and drama film that centers around a young car thief who tries to persuade a girl he's seeing to hide in Italy with him after he kills a policeman. So what I liked about the movie was the soundtrack, the editing, the shots of Paris, as well as the performances of our lead actors. Now, the bad parts. The dialogue between the characters was very repetitive, sometimes bordering on boring. The characters have no real growth, so I really wasn't interested or invested in them. And the plot, I dare say, is the opposite of Breathless. It meanders around quite a bit, it's slow, and it's just frankly uninteresting. And that's why I give Breathless a 6.5 out of 10. Number 1, or the worst movie I've watched over quarantine, Kind Hearts and Coronets, starring Dennis Price, Alec Guinness, Valerie Hobson, and Joan Greenwood, directed by Robert Hamer. Kind Hearts and Coronets is a 1949 British black comedy film that tells the story of a man who seeks to avenge his mother's death by murdering every single family member who stands between him and a family fortune he is cut off from. I have to say, the only good thing about this movie is Alec Guinness plays 9 different characters in this movie. You might know him as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. Now, onto the bad parts. Now, I think calling this movie a comedy is just straight up deceiving. I don't think I laughed more than once throughout this entire movie. The movie also relies way too much on narration, and this narration is completed by a protagonist who lacks any sort of charm or emotion whatsoever. And I just kept telling myself that this movie was going to get better and better and better, but it just never happened. So I highly recommend staying away from this movie. I gave it a 5 out of 10. And so there we have it, the 7 worst movies I watched during my time in quarantine. Thank you guys a lot for watching, and let me know in the comments below which of these movies you've seen or which movies you want me to rank or review next. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, I would really appreciate it if you guys can give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps a lot. Thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next video.